The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of anti-gravity platforms. 7 species sat in the Great Circle, representatives of the most powerful civilizations in known space. They called themselves the Sovereignty, and for the past 2,000 years, they had ruled the galaxy without question. Kael'thas stood at the center of the chamber, his blue skin turning darker with nervousness. He was young for an archaeologist, barely 200 cycles old, and he had never addressed the Sovereignty Council before. His hands trembled as he held the data tablet. "Honored Council," he began, his voice echoing in the vast space. "I have made a discovery that changes everything we know about galactic history." Supreme Commander Vexara leaned forward on her platform. She was a Kralix, tall and imposing, with armor-like skin that gleamed under the lights, her 4 eyes fixed on Kael'thas with barely concealed annoyance. "Archaeologist Kael'thas," she said, her voice cold, "we have more important matters to discuss. The mining operations in Sector 7 require our attention. Why should we care about old rocks and dead civilizations?" Kael'thas felt his courage faltering, but he pressed on. "Because I found evidence of the Terrans, Commander." The humans. They were real. A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. Even the normally dignified representatives of the Pelthar species, who prided themselves on their intellectual superiority, allowed themselves amused clicks and chirps. "The humans?" Council member Thexan spoke up, his mechanical voice translator giving his words a mocking tone. "You mean the mythical warriors from children's stories? The supposed masters of impossible technology, who could bend space and time?" "They existed," Kael'thas insisted. "I found their station. It's at the edge of the void, in the region we've always avoided. The structure is intact, powered down but not destroyed. Inside there are data cores, star charts, military logs, and records of hundreds of worlds they once inhabited." Vexara's expression hardened. "The void is empty space, archaeologist. Nothing lives there. Nothing has ever lived there. The radiation levels alone would kill any known species within hours." "That's what I thought too," Kael'thas said, his confidence growing. "But the station has shielding technology unlike anything in our databases. The walls are made of materials we cannot identify. And the data cores, when I accessed them, they contained a message." He activated his tablet and a holographic display filled the center of the chamber. Alien text appeared, flowing and precise, accompanied by a translation that Kael'thas had spent weeks decoding. "To whoever finds this station," the message read, "we are the Terran Federation, the human species of Earth. 2,000 years ago, a plague struck our people. We do not know its origin, but it spread through every human world like wildfire. Billions died. Our great civilization crumbled in months." The laughter in the chamber had stopped. Every representative was staring at the hologram now. The message continued. "We made the choice to withdraw from known space. The plague may have been natural, or it may have been a weapon. We could not risk spreading it to other species, and we could not defend ourselves while our people were dying. We retreated into the void, into spaces between spaces where we could heal and rebuild in isolation." Kael'thas paused the playback. "There's more," he said. "Much more. Complete records of their technology, their culture, their history. But the most important part comes at the end." He resumed the playback. The text shifted, and a new section appeared, marked with symbols that indicated high priority and urgent warning. "We're not gone," the message said. "We're waiting. We're watching. And if the galaxy ever needs us again, we will return. This station is our promise. We were here. We will be here again." Signed, Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the Terran Third Fleet, year 2247 of the Common Era. Silence filled the chamber. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Vexara stood from her platform, her full height making her tower over the others. "This is a fabrication," she declared. "An elaborate hoax, perhaps created by one of our rival factions to create chaos. Humans are a myth, a story told to young ones to teach them about honor and sacrifice. They never existed. But the evidence—" Kael'thas started to protest. "Evidence can be manufactured," Vexara interrupted. "I have led the Sovereignty military for 300 cycles. I have conquered 40 systems and brought order to 100 worlds. Never, not once have I encountered any trace of these supposed super beings. They are fairy tales, archaeologist. Nothing more." Council member Thexan nodded in agreement. "The Supreme Commander is correct. If humans existed and possessed technology superior to ours, where are they? Why have they not revealed themselves? The logical conclusion is that they never existed at all. Kael'thas felt frustration burning in his chest. Then explain the station. Explain the technology I found. Explain materials that our best scientists cannot analyze or reproduce. I explain it as the remnants of some unknown species that went extinct long ago, Vexara said dismissively. Perhaps they called themselves humans. Perhaps that was their name for their kind. But they are gone now, dead and forgotten, and they certainly were not the godlike beings from our legends. I request permission to mount a full expedition to the void, Kael'thas said. Let me bring back more evidence. Let me prove that humans were real, that they might still be out there. Vexara's laugh was harsh and cold. Permission denied. The void is off limits for good reason. The radiation, the spatial anomalies, the complete absence of any valuable resources. We have real work to do, archaeologist. The sovereignty is expanding. We have new worlds to bring into our fold, new resources to extract, new species to civilize. You mean conquer, Kael'thas said quietly. The chamber went silent again, but this time the silence was dangerous. Vexara descended from her platform and walked slowly toward Kael'thas. When she stood before him, he could see the cold fury in her eyes. Choose your next words carefully, young one, she said softly. The sovereignty brings order to chaos. We bring civilization to primitive species. We bring prosperity and peace at the point of a gun, Kael'thas muttered. That will be enough, Council Member Felsara spoke up. She was a Pelthar, known for her diplomatic skills. Archaeologist Kael'thas, your discovery is noted in the official records. However, without more substantial evidence, we cannot authorize further expeditions to such a dangerous region. The matter is closed. Kael'thas knew he was defeated. He bowed his head and left the chamber, clutching his tablet with the precious data from the human station. Behind him, he could hear the council moving on to other business, already forgetting about his discovery. But as he walked through the corridors of the Sovereignty headquarters, Kael'thas made a decision. They could dismiss him, they could mock him, but he knew the truth. Humans were real. They had existed, and if that message was correct, they were still out there somewhere, watching and waiting. He just hoped the galaxy would not give them a reason to return. 3 months passed. Kael'thas found himself stripped of his position as lead archaeologist. The council had reassigned him to cataloging minor artifacts in the basement archives of the Sovereignty Museum. It was punishment for his obsession with mythology, as Vexara had written in his performance review. But Kael'thas did not stop his research. Late at night, when the museum was empty, he continued to study the data from the human station. He learned about Earth, a blue planet with vast oceans and diverse life. He learned about human culture, their art, their music, their endless creativity and curiosity. He learned about their wars, their struggles, and their ultimate decision to withdraw from the galaxy, rather than risk harming other species with their plague. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that humans were not just real, but extraordinary. They had possessed technology that the Sovereignty still could not match even after 2,000 years. Their ships could travel faster, their weapons struck harder, their shields were impenetrable. And yet they had chosen mercy over power, isolation over conquest. One night, as Kael'thas was deep in his research, an alarm sounded throughout the museum. He quickly hid his work and rushed to see what was happening. The holographic displays in the main hall were all showing the same thing, an emergency broadcast from Sovereignty High Command. Vexara's face filled the screens.
Citizens of the Sovereignty, she announced.
Long-range sensors have detected a massive energy signature emerging from the void. The source is unknown, but the power readings are unlike anything we have ever encountered. Kael'thas felt his heart begin to race. Could it be? After all this time? All military vessels are being recalled to defensive positions, Vexara continued. We do not know if this is a natural phenomenon or a potential threat. The Sovereignty stands ready to face any challenge. That is all. The broadcast ended, but Kael'thas stood frozen in place. His mind was racing with possibilities. The void had been silent for 2,000 years. And now, just months after he had discovered the human station, something was emerging from that forbidden region of space. He rushed back to his workstation and pulled up the star charts from the human data cores. His hands moved frantically across the holographic interface as he overlaid the human charts with current Sovereignty maps. What he saw made him gasp. The energy signature was coming from coordinates that the humans had marked as significant. On their charts, the location was labeled with a simple phrase, Home Fleet Staging Ground Alpha. Kael'thas knew he had to warn someone, had to make them understand what this might mean. But who would listen to him now? He had been discredited, dismissed as a fool chasing myths. He made a decision. If the authorities would not listen, he would go directly to the people who might be affected. He accessed the Sovereignty Communication Network and began sending messages to dozens of independent colonies and minor species on the edge of known space. His message was simple. The humans may be returning. Do not provoke them. Do not attack them. If they are real and they are coming back, we need to show them that the galaxy has not forgotten the value of peace. As he sent the last message, security officers burst into the archives. Someone had detected his unauthorized use of the communications network. Archaeologist Kael'thas, the lead officer said, "You are under arrest for spreading false information and causing public panic." As they led him away in restraints, Kael'thas looked up at the display screen, still showing the energy readings from the void. The signature was growing stronger, moving closer to known space. Whatever was coming, it was massive beyond comprehension. In the holding cell, Kael'thas sat and waited. He thought about Admiral Elena Vasquez and her final message. "We will return," she had written. 2,000 years was a long time to wait. What had the humans been doing all that time? Had they truly been watching? And if so, what had they seen? He thought about the sovereignty and its iron grip on the galaxy. He thought about all the species that had been civilized through conquest, all the worlds strip-mined for resources, all the cultures erased in the name of order and progress. If the humans were truly returning, would they approve of what the galaxy had become in their absence? Kael'thas suspected he already knew the answer, and it terrified him far more than any prison cell ever could. Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane stood in the observation deck of Sentinel's Eye and looked out at the darkness of the void. From here, hidden in a pocket dimension that humanity had created 2,000 years ago, he could see the distant lights of the galaxy they had once called home. He was a tall man, even by human standards, with gray hair that spoke of his 60 years of service. His uniform was simple and dark, marked only by the 5 stars on his collar that showed his rank. Behind him, the massive station hummed with activity as thousands of personnel monitored every corner of known space. "Admiral," a voice called out. Kane turned to see Lieutenant Sarah Chen approaching. She was young, barely 30, and like most humans born in the last 2 millennia, she had never seen the galaxy beyond the void. "The assembly is ready for your briefing." Kane nodded and followed her through the corridors of Sentinel's Eye. The station was enormous, a construct of metal and energy that served as humanity's watchpost on the edge of their self-imposed exile. Through the windows, he could see the other stations of the network, dozens of them, all connected by quantum communication systems that operated faster than light itself. They had built all of this in secret, hidden from the galaxy that had forgotten them. 2,000 years of work, of planning, of waiting. The briefing room was packed with holographic projections of representatives from every human colony. There were hundreds of worlds now, scattered throughout the void in carefully hidden systems. The population had recovered from the plague that had nearly destroyed them. 20 billion humans lived and thrived in isolation, building a civilization unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. President Amara Singh appeared at the head of the table. She was a dignified woman with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much. She had led the Human Colonial Assembly for 20 years, guiding humanity through its long recovery. "Admiral Kane," she said, "please share your intelligence report with the Assembly." Kane activated the holographic display and images filled the room. Ships, battles, and conquered worlds, all of it showed the current state of the galaxy beyond the void. 2,000 years ago, Kane began, humanity withdrew from known space to protect ourselves and others from the plague that was killing us. We made a promise to return when we were ready. The question before us today is simple. Are we ready? And more importantly, does the galaxy need us? He changed the display, showing the expansion of the sovereignty over the past centuries. Red zones spread across the star map like an infection, marking conquered territories and subjugated species. The sovereignty controls 70% of known space. Kane continued. They are a coalition of 7 species that rose to power after humanity's withdrawal. They claim to bring order and civilization, but our long-range observations tell a different story. The display shifted to show recorded transmissions, intercepted over years of careful monitoring, worlds being bombarded, species being enslaved, resources being stripped from planets until nothing remained but dead rocks. They have conquered 83 sentient species, Kane said, his voice growing harder. 42 of those species are now extinct. Their populations worked to death in mining operations or simply eliminated when they proved difficult to control. Murmurs of anger and shock rippled through the assembly. Even after 2,000 years of isolation, humans still valued life and freedom above all else. 3 months ago, Kane continued, one of our deep space probes detected unusual activity near our old border stations. An archaeologist from one of the sovereignty species discovered Station Echo, one of our automated outposts. He accessed our data cores and learned about humanity. President Singh leaned forward. How did the sovereignty leadership react? They dismissed it as mythology, Kane said. The archaeologist has been discredited and imprisoned. But the discovery has caused ripples. Some in the galaxy are beginning to wonder if the old legends might be true. He changed the display again, this time showing a peaceful world with green forests and blue oceans. This is Velnar Prime, home to the Velnar species. They are a peaceful people, technologically primitive compared to the sovereignty but rich in resources. 3 weeks ago, the sovereignty declared them a target for civilizing intervention. The display showed military projections. 500 sovereignty warships were gathering in nearby systems, preparing for invasion. The Velnar have no meaningful defenses, Kane said quietly. Their population is 4 billion. Sovereignty protocols for intervention suggest that they will enslave or eliminate 75% of the population and strip mine the planet's core for rare metals. Based on our observations of similar operations, Velnar Prime will be a dead world within 5 years. The assembly erupted into argument. Some representatives called for immediate intervention. Others urged caution. President Singh raised her hand and silence fell. Admiral Kane, she said, what is your recommendation? Kane took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for over the past decade. The moment when humanity would decide whether to remain hidden or step back into the light. Madam President, members of the Assembly, he said, 2,000 years ago we made a choice to withdraw. We did so to protect the galaxy from our plague and to protect ourselves from enemies we could not identify. That choice was necessary then. But the galaxy has changed, and so have we. He gestured to the display showing Velnar Prime. We have watched the sovereignty grow and expand. We have monitored their actions, recorded their crimes, and done nothing. We told ourselves that we were not ready, that we needed more time to prepare. But I believe the truth is simpler. We have been afraid. Afraid? Council member David Okonkwo spoke up. He represented the Mars colonies. Admiral, humanity has never been afraid of anything. We've been afraid of making the wrong choice, Kane said. Afraid of revealing ourselves too soon. Afraid of starting a war we might not be able to control. And those fears are valid. But there comes a time when inaction becomes its own form of action. By doing nothing, we allow evil to flourish. He pointed at the image of Velnar Prime. 4 billion innocent beings are about to be slaughtered or enslaved. They have no defense, no hope, and no one coming to save them, unless we choose to act. President Singh studied Kane for a long moment. You're asking us to reveal humanity's existence after 2 millennia of secrecy. You're asking us to potentially start a war with the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Are you confident we can win such a conflict? Madam President, Kane said, we spent 2,000 years advancing our technology while the rest of the galaxy stagnated under sovereignty rule. Our quantum drives are 50 times faster than their best engines. Our weapons can strike through dimensions. Our shields can withstand direct hits from stars. We have 10,000 Dreadnoughts in the home fleet alone, each one more powerful than anything the sovereignty has ever built. He paused, then added, but this isn't about winning a war. This is about preventing one. The sovereignty has grown arrogant because no one has ever successfully opposed them. They believe they are invincible. We need to show them that they are wrong, that there are consequences for their actions. Council member Yuki Tanaka from the Titan colonies spoke up. What you're describing is not just first contact. You're describing an ultimatum backed by overwhelming force. That's not diplomacy, Admiral. That's a threat. Sometimes a threat is the only language tyrants understand, Kane replied. I'm not suggesting we destroy the sovereignty. I'm suggesting we give them a choice, change their ways, or face opposition from a power they cannot defeat. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued about risk and responsibility, about humanity's place in the galaxy, and about whether they had the right to interfere in galactic affairs after so long away. Finally, President Singh called for a vote. The question was simple. Should humanity deploy the home fleet to defend Velnar Prime and announce their return to known space? Kane watched as the votes came in. The display showed the tally in real time. It was close, far closer than he had hoped. Many representatives were still cautious, still afraid of the consequences. But in the end, by a margin of 53% to 47%, the vote passed. President Singh stood. Admiral Kane, you are hereby authorized to deploy the home fleet to Velnar Prime. Your orders are to prevent the sovereignty invasion and to make it clear that humanity has returned. However, you are to minimize casualties wherever possible. We are not returning as conquerors. Understood, Madam President, Kane said, saluting. There's one more thing, Singh added. The entire galaxy will be watching this. Your actions will define how humanity is perceived for generations to come. Show them that we are strong, but also show them that we are just. Show them why the galaxy needs humanity back. Kane nodded. I won't fail, Madam President. As the assembly adjourned, Kane returned to the observation deck. He activated his communicator and spoke clearly. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane to all ships of the home fleet. Prepare for deployment. Destination, Velnar Prime. Mission, humanitarian intervention and first contact. All crews to battle stations. We jump in 6 hours. Throughout the void, hidden in their secret anchorages, 10,000 dreadnoughts powered up their quantum drives. These were the ships humanity had built during their long exile. Vessels that combined the best of human engineering with technologies the sovereignty could not even imagine. Each dreadnought was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. But they also carried medical bays, fabrication facilities, and supplies to help rebuild worlds the sovereignty had damaged. Kane watched as the first ships began to appear on his sensors, emerging from their hiding places to gather at the rally point. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, a force capable of conquering the entire galaxy if they chose to do so, but that was not their purpose. They were not returning as conquerors or oppressors. They were returning as protectors, as defenders of those who could not defend themselves. Dr. James Kowalski appeared beside Kane. He was the chief scientist responsible for humanity's quantum shielding technology, the breakthrough that had made their ships virtually invincible. It's really happening, Kowalski said quietly. After all these years, we're finally going back. We never truly left, Kane replied. We were always watching, always waiting for the right moment. And you think this is the right moment? Kane looked at the gathering fleet. I think if we wait any longer, there won't be anyone left to save. The hours passed quickly. Kane spent them reviewing tactical plans and preparing his speech for first contact. He knew that his first words to the galaxy in 2,000 years would be crucial. He needed to be firm but not threatening, powerful but not cruel. Finally, the time came. All 10,000 dreadnoughts were assembled, their quantum drives creating a shimmering field of energy that distorted space itself. Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, named after humanity's most persistent quality. All ships report ready, Admiral, Lieutenant Chen reported. Kane took one last look at the void that had been humanity's home for so long. Then he turned to his crew. Open a channel to all ships. Channel open, sir. This is Admiral Kane to all ships of the home fleet. 2,000 years ago, our ancestors made the difficult choice to leave the galaxy we loved, to protect it from our plague. Today we return to protect it from a different kind of disease, tyranny. Our mission is clear. We will defend the defenseless. We will oppose oppression wherever we find it. And we will show the galaxy that humanity has not forgotten the values that made us great. He paused, then added, We're not going back as the humans we were. We're going back as the humans we've become. Stronger, wiser, and absolutely determined to make a difference. All ships engage quantum drives on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Space itself seemed to tear apart as 10,000 ships vanished from the void. They traveled through dimensions the sovereignty did not even know existed, crossing light years in the blink of an eye. When they emerged into normal space above Velnar Prime, the entire galaxy would change forever. Velnar Prime turned slowly beneath a golden sun, its forests and oceans gleaming like jewels. On the surface, 4 billion Velnar lived in harmony with their world, unaware that death was coming from the stars. The Velnar were a peaceful species. They had evolved from herd animals, and even now, their society valued community and cooperation above all else. They had no weapons of war, no ships capable of combat, no military tradition. Their greatest achievement was art, creating sculptures and songs that celebrated the beauty of life. Elder Shara stood in the great assembly hall, her gray fur marked with the patterns of age and wisdom. Around her, the other elders had gathered, their faces showing confusion and fear. "The metal ships have appeared in our sky," Elder Kor said, his voice shaking. "Hundreds of them, just like the prophecies warned. The monsters from the void have come for us." Shara looked at the holographic display showing the Sovereignty fleet. 500 warships hung in orbit, dark and angular, like predators circling their prey. The Sovereignty had sent a single message, broadcast on all frequencies. "The Velnar species is hereby claimed by the Sovereignty. Surrender immediately and prepare for integration. Resistance will be met with force." "What does integration mean?" young Elder Vess asked. "It means they will take everything," Shara said quietly. "Our world, our resources, our freedom. Other species have told us stories of Sovereignty integration. Most who resist are killed. The rest become slaves. Then we must surrender," Kor said. "We have no choice." "We could evacuate," Elder Mira suggested. "Load our ships with as many people as possible and flee into deep space." Shara shook her head. "Our ships are slow and unarmed. They would catch us within hours. And even if some escaped, where would we go? The Sovereignty controls most of known space." A heavy silence fell over the assembly. The Velnar had always believed that their peaceful nature would protect them, that no species would harm those who meant no harm themselves. Now they were learning the harsh truth. In a galaxy ruled by power, peace was not enough. Suddenly, a hidden door in the assembly hall opened. A figure stumbled in, exhausted and covered in dust. It took Shara a moment to recognize him as Kael'thas, the archaeologist who had visited their world 6 months ago to study their ancient ruins. "Elder Shara," Kael'thas gasped, "you must evacuate your cities immediately. The Sovereignty will begin bombardment within the hour." "How did you escape their custody?" Shara asked. Kael'thas had become famous in recent months for his claims about humanity, and she knew the Sovereignty had imprisoned him for it. "I broke out when the fleet deployed," Kael'thas said. "I stole a shuttle and came here as fast as I could. Please, you must believe me. I've studied Sovereignty invasion protocols. They will target your population centers first to break your will to resist." "We have no will to resist," Vess said bitterly. "We have nothing to resist with." "Then evacuate," Kael'thas pleaded. "Get your people into the forests, the mountains, anywhere away from the cities. It won't save everyone, but it might save some." Shara made a decision. "Sound the alarm. All Velnar are to leave the cities immediately. Tell them to take only what they can carry and move to the wilderness." As the other elders rushed to implement the evacuation, Shara approached Kael'thas. "Why did you come here? You risked your life to warn us, but we are not your species. Why do you care?" Kael'thas met her eyes. "Because someone has to. Because if we all just stand by and watch evil happen, then we are all responsible for it." High above Velnar Prime, in the command ship of the Sovereignty fleet, Supreme Commander Vexara watched the chaos on the planet's surface with cold satisfaction. The Velnar were fleeing their cities in panic, exactly as she had predicted. "Typical behavior of primitive species," she said to her officers. "They have no discipline, no order. It's almost merciful to bring them under our control." "Commander," her tactical officer reported, "the fleet is in position. All weapons are charged and ready. We await your order to begin bombardment." Vexara studied the planet below. It was beautiful, she had to admit. Rich in resources and perfectly positioned for strategic purposes. Once they cleared away most of the Velnar population, this world would become a valuable addition to the Sovereignty. "Begin with surgical strikes on their government buildings," she ordered. "Let them see that resistance is futile. Then we will move to their manufacturing centers and transportation hubs. By this time tomorrow, they will be begging to surrender." "Yes, Commander," the tactical officer replied. He began entering commands into his console. Vexara allowed herself a small smile. This would be her 84th conquest, another glorious victory for the Sovereignty. Perhaps the Council would finally grant her the additional resources she had been requesting for the next campaign against the Fringe Worlds. Her tactical officer suddenly froze. "Commander, we're detecting a spatial anomaly." "What kind of anomaly?" Vexara asked, her attention sharpening. "Unknown, Commander. It's massive. The sensors are having difficulty getting accurate readings, but the energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Vexara moved to the main display. What she saw made her blood run cold. Space itself was tearing apart. It started as a small ripple, like a stone dropped in still water. But the ripple grew and spread, becoming a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Energy poured from the tear, brilliant and terrifying, creating a light show that lit up the entire system. "Get me readings," Vexara shouted. "What is that?" "It's a quantum tunnel, Commander," the science officer reported, his voice shaking. "But the power requirements for something that size are impossible. Nothing we know of could generate that much energy." The tear widened further, and then, one by one, ships began to emerge. They were enormous, each one dwarfing the largest Sovereignty dreadnought. Sleek and dark, they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for vessels so massive. Their hulls were marked with symbols in a language the Sovereignty computers could not identify. One ship emerged. Then 10, then 100. The flow continued, an endless stream of warships pouring through the quantum tunnel into normal space. "How many?" Vexara whispered. "Counting now, Commander," the tactical officer said. His voice had lost all confidence. 500, 1,000, 2,000. The numbers kept climbing. The Sovereignty fleet, which had seemed so powerful moments before, now appeared tiny and fragile compared to the Armada filling the sky. 5,000, 7,000, 9,000. On the surface of Velnar Prime, the evacuation had stopped. Velnar across the planet stood still, staring up at the sky where impossible numbers of ships had appeared. The vessels were so massive that they blocked out the sun in some areas, casting entire continents into shadow. Elder Shara stood beside Kael'thos, her mouth open in shock. "What are they?" she asked. Kael'thos was staring at the ships with tears running down his face. He had spent years studying the legends, searching for proof, enduring mockery and imprisonment. And now here they were. "Humans," he whispered. "The humans have returned." In the Sovereignty command ship, Vexara watched as the final count appeared on her display. 10,000 ships, an armada beyond comprehension, appearing from nowhere with technology that should not exist. "Get me a weapons analysis," she ordered, trying to keep her voice steady. Anne broadcast a hail to the lead vessel. "Demand identification." "Commander," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies, audio and visual." "Put it on screen." The main display shifted, and Vexara found herself looking at a human. She had seen images in the old legends, but those had been drawings and sculptures, easy to dismiss as artistic interpretation. This was real. A human, alive and in command of the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Marcus Kane sat in his command chair, his expression calm but his eyes hard as steel. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 2,000 years of patience finally coming to an end. "This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Federation. You are attacking a defenseless species. Stand down immediately." For a moment, Vexara could not respond. Every instinct told her this was impossible, that humans were myths and legends. But the evidence was overwhelming, hanging in space before her. She forced herself to speak. "This is Supreme Commander Vexara of the Sovereignty. You have no authority in this region. The Velnar species falls under our jurisdiction. Withdraw your fleet or face the consequences." Kane's expression did not change. "The Terran Federation recognizes no species' right to subjugate another. We will ask once more. Stand down." Vexara felt anger rising to replace her fear. She had not built her reputation on backing down from threats. "You think numbers alone give you authority? The Sovereignty has held power in this galaxy for 2,000 years. We do not yield to legends that suddenly appear from nowhere." "We are not legends," Kane said quietly. "We are humanity. We left to protect the galaxy from our plague. We've returned because the galaxy needs protection from something far worse. Tyrants like you." "How dare you?" Vexara started, but Kane interrupted. "Your fleet has 3 minutes to power down your weapons and withdraw to a safe distance. After that, we will consider any armed vessel near Velnar Prime to be a hostile threat." Vexara cut the transmission. She turned to her officers, seeing fear and uncertainty in their faces. "He's bluffing," she said, more to convince herself than them. "They appear suddenly with advanced technology, but we don't know if they're actually willing to use it. They could be explorers or traders trying to intimidate us." "Commander," her tactical officer said carefully, "the energy readings from those ships are off our scale. If they're fully armed—" "Every species can be hurt," Vexara interrupted. "Every ship can be destroyed. We have 500 warships battle-tested and crewed by the finest warriors in the sovereignty. We will not be scared away by an unknown species, no matter how impressive their entrance." She knew she was making a decision that would define her legacy. If she retreated now, the sovereignty would see it as weakness. Their entire power structure was based on the perception of invincibility. One retreat could trigger rebellions across 100 worlds. But if she fought and won, she would become the hero who proved that even the legendary humans could be defeated. "All ships," she ordered. "Target the lead human vessel. Fire on my command." "Commander," her second officer spoke up, "shouldn't we at least try diplomatic negotiations first?" "There is nothing to negotiate," Vexara said coldly. "They either yield to sovereignty authority or they learn the price of opposing us. Prepare to fire." On the surface of Velnar Prime, Elder Shara grabbed Kael'thos's arm. "Tell me the truth. Can the humans protect us, or will this just make everything worse?" Kael'thos thought about all the data he had studied, all the records of human history and technology. "If the legends are true," he said slowly, "then the Sovereignty Fleet is about to learn what it means to face a species that spent 2,000 years preparing for this moment. And if the legends are wrong?" Kael'thos looked at the massive human fleet filling the sky. "Then we're all about to die together." In space above the planet, the 3 minutes ticked down. The Sovereignty Fleet maintained their weapons lock on the human vessels. The human fleet remained motionless, their shields shimmering with barely contained energy. Vexara watched the countdown reach 0. She took a deep breath, committed to her course of action. "All ships, fire." 500 Sovereignty warships opened fire simultaneously, unleashing enough destructive power to crack a moon. Beams of concentrated energy, plasma torpedoes and kinetic slugs traveling at relativistic speeds all converged on the lead human dreadnought, the Indomitable. The weapon fire struck the human shields and vanished like raindrops hitting an ocean. The shields around the Indomitable rippled like water where the Sovereignty weapons struck them, then returned to their perfect state. Not a single shot had penetrated. Not a single hit had caused any damage. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kane stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the tactical display with calm patience. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for decades. "Sovereignty weapons fire has ceased, Admiral," Lieutenant Chen reported. "No damage to any of our vessels. Shields held at 98%. The power drain was negligible." Kane nodded. He had expected this. The quantum shielding that Dr. Kowalski had perfected created a barrier that existed partially in another dimension. Conventional weapons simply could not touch it. The Sovereignty had just unleashed their most powerful assault, and it had accomplished nothing. "Open a channel to the Sovereignty flagship," Kane ordered. "Let's give them another chance." On the Sovereignty command ship, chaos had erupted. Officers shouted reports, alarms blared, and displays showed the impossible reality. Their attack had failed completely. "How?" Vexara demanded. "How is this possible? Those were direct hits with our most powerful weapons. Their shields are unlike anything in our databases," the science officer stammered. "The energy is being displaced into another dimension. We have no weapon that can penetrate that kind of defense." The communications officer interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." Vexara straightened her uniform, trying to regain her composure. "Put it through." Admiral Kane's face appeared on screen again. His expression had not changed, but Vexara could see the disappointment in his eyes. "We will ask once more," Kane said. "Stand down." Vexara felt humiliation burning in her chest. She had spent 300 cycles building her reputation as an undefeatable commander. She would not surrender now. "All ships," she ordered. "Break formation. Engage evasive patterns and target their shield generators. There must be a weak point. Find it and exploit it." The Sovereignty fleet scattered, ships moving in different directions as they tried to surround the human vessels. They fired again and again, varying their weapons, changing their approach angles. attempting to find any vulnerability in the human defenses. The human fleet did not move. They simply held position, forming a protective shell around Velnar Prime. Their shields absorbed every attack without effort. "Admiral," Lieutenant Chen said, "the Sovereignty fleet is attempting to flank us and reach the planet." Kane watched the tactical display. Several Sovereignty ships were trying to slip past the human formation to resume their bombardment of Velnar Prime. "I think we've given them enough chances," Kane said quietly. "Authorization code Kane Alpha 7. Release safeties on precision weapons. Target their weapon systems and engines only. Minimize casualties. Safeties released, Admiral. Weapons locked on Sovereignty fleet." Kane took a breath. This was the moment. The first time humanity had used force against another species in over 2,000 years. The weight of history pressed down on him, but he knew it was necessary. Fire. The human fleet opened fire, and the galaxy learned why humanity had been feared as well as respected. The weapons were nothing like what the Sovereignty had used. No visible beams, no bright explosions. The human ships fired quantum disruptors, weapons that targeted specific areas of a ship without affecting anything else around them. The shots passed through shields and armor as if they did not exist, because in the dimension where the weapons operated, they did not. In the Sovereignty command ship, every weapons console suddenly went dark. The engines powered down. Life support remained active. Communications stayed online, but every system related to combat or movement simply stopped working. "What happened?" Vexara shouted. "Report!" "All weapons are offline, Commander," the tactical officer said in disbelief. "Engines are non-responsive." "I'm not even showing damage. The systems are just turned off." Across the Sovereignty fleet, the same thing was happening. 500 warships found themselves suddenly drifting in space, completely disarmed and immobilized. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply rendered harmless. The precision was terrifying. The human fleet had targeted and disabled 500 ships simultaneously, hitting only the specific systems they wanted to disable while leaving everything else intact. Kane's voice came over all frequencies again. "This is Admiral Kane. You are no longer a threat to Velnar Prime. Stand by for rescue operations. Any hostile action will result in the destruction of your vessels." Vexara slumped in her command chair, the reality of her defeat finally sinking in. In less than 20 minutes, her entire fleet had been neutralized without the loss of a single ship on either side. The humans had not just defeated her. They had demonstrated a level of technological superiority that made the Sovereignty look like children playing with toys. "Commander," her communications officer said quietly, "we're detecting new ships approaching. They're broadcasting Terran identification codes and appear to be rescue vessels." Vexara looked at her display. Dozens of smaller human ships were moving toward the disabled Sovereignty fleet. Medical ships, repair vessels, and support craft. "They're going to help us?" she asked in confusion. "It appears so, Commander." Vexara watched as human rescue teams began docking with Sovereignty vessels, offering medical assistance and engineering support to repair critical systems. They were treating their defeated enemies with kindness and mercy. She felt shame burning through her in a way that no military defeat ever had. On the surface of Velnar Prime, celebrations had erupted across the planet. The Velnar people danced and sang, praising the return of the protectors from ancient legends. Elder Shara stood with Kael'thos, watching as human shuttles began descending to the planet's surface. "They came," she said, wonder in her voice. "After 2,000 years, they actually came to help us." "They were always watching," Kael'thos said, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need them most. One of the shuttles landed near the Great Assembly Hall. The hatch opened and Admiral Kane stepped out, accompanied by a small security detail. He was tall and imposing in his uniform, but his expression was gentle as he looked around at the Velnar people gathering to see him. Shara approached, bowing in the traditional Velnar greeting. "Admiral Kane, the Velnar people thank you for saving us. We are forever in your debt." Kane returned the bow, though it was clearly not a human custom. "Elder Shara, there is no debt. Protecting those who cannot protect themselves is not a favor. It's a responsibility." Kael'thos stepped forward. "Admiral, I'm archaeologist Kael'thos. I found your station. Your message from Admiral Vasquez. I tried to warn people that humanity was real, but they did not believe me." Kane studied the young alien. "I know. We've been monitoring communications. You were imprisoned for telling the truth about us." "It was worth it," Kael'thos said. To see this moment, to know I was right, to witness humanity's return. It was worth everything. Kane smiled slightly. Would you walk with me, archaeologist? You too, Elder Shara. There are things we need to discuss about the future. As they walked through the Velnar city, Kane explained humanity's long absence and their decision to return. He spoke of the plague that had driven them into exile and the 2,000 years they had spent rebuilding in secret. We've been watching the galaxy all this time, Kane said. Monitoring events, tracking the rise of the sovereignty. We've seen the good they've done, bringing order to chaotic regions. But we've also seen the evil. The conquered species, the destroyed worlds, the countless lives lost to their expansion. Why did you wait so long? Shara asked. If you had such power, why not return sooner? Kane stopped and looked at the sky, where the human fleet still maintained position above the planet. Because we were afraid of exactly this. We knew that revealing ourselves would change everything. We knew that our return could start a war that would devastate the galaxy. We wanted to be certain that when we came back it would be worth the risk. And now? Kael'thas asked. Now we've seen enough, Kane said firmly. The sovereignty has gone too far. If we had waited any longer, there would have been nothing left worth saving. Far above, in the disabled sovereignty command ship, Vexara received a message requesting her presence aboard the Indomitable. She considered refusing, but what would be the point? She had been defeated completely. The least she could do was face her conquerors with dignity. She took a shuttle to the human flagship, escorted by human security officers who were polite but alert. When she entered the conference room, she found Admiral Kane waiting with Elder Shara and Kael'thas. Supreme Commander Vexara, Kane said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit. Vexara sat stiffly, her pride wounded but not entirely broken. I am your prisoner, Admiral. What do you want with me? You're not a prisoner, Kane said. Your crew is free to leave once we've restored your ship's basic functions. This is not a capture. It's a conversation. About what? My surrender? Your terms for my defeat? Kane leaned forward. About the future, Supreme Commander. You and I both know that what happened here today will change the galaxy forever. The sovereignty's reputation for invincibility is broken. News of this encounter will spread to every system within weeks. The question is, what happens next? Vexara was silent, considering his words. We don't want to conquer the galaxy, Kane continued. We don't want to rule over other species or force them to follow human laws. But we will not tolerate the continued oppression of peaceful species. The sovereignty has a choice to make. What choice? Vexara asked bitterly. Submit to human authority? No, Kane said. Choose to be better. The sovereignty was founded to bring order to chaotic space. That's a noble goal. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that order without justice is just tyranny with better organization. He activated a holographic display showing dozens of worlds. These are the species you've conquered in the past century alone. Half of them are extinct. The others live in conditions that would shame any civilized society. This is not order, Commander. This is genocide. Vexara looked at the images. She had justified each conquest as necessary, as bringing primitive species into the fold of civilization. But seeing them all together, seeing the death tolls and the devastation, she could not escape the truth. What do you want from us? She asked quietly. We want the sovereignty to fulfill its original purpose, Kane said. Bring order, yes, but also bring justice. Protect species instead of exploiting them. Trade instead of taking. Cooperate instead of conquering. And if the sovereignty refuses, Kane's expression hardened, then humanity will oppose you. We have 10,000 ships here, Commander. We have millions more in reserve. We have technology you cannot match and resources you cannot imagine. But more than that, we have patience. We waited 2,000 years to return. We can wait as long as necessary to see the galaxy become what it should be. Vexara met his eyes. You're giving us an ultimatum. I'm giving you an opportunity, Kane corrected. Help us build a better galaxy, or watch as your empire crumbles under the weight of its own corruption. The choice is yours, Kael'thas spoke up. Commander Vexara, I know you see this as a defeat, but I've studied human history. They're not offering you enslavement or destruction. They're offering you a chance to be part of something greater than the sovereignty ever was. Why should I trust them? Vexara demanded. Why should any of us trust a species that appears from nowhere with overwhelming force? Because of what they did today, Elder Shara said gently. They could have destroyed your entire fleet. Instead, they disabled it. They could have let you die in space. Instead, they sent rescue teams. This is not the behavior of conquerors, Commander. This is the behavior of protectors. Vexara sat in silence for a long time, processing everything. Finally, she spoke. I cannot speak for the entire sovereignty. I am just one commander, but I will carry your message to the Council. I will tell them what I witnessed here. I will tell them that the legends were true, that humanity has returned and that we must decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in. Kane nodded. That's all I ask. But be warned, Commander. The sovereignty will respond to this in one of two ways, with wisdom or with violence. If they choose violence, we will be ready. I believe you, Vexara said. She stood and offered a sovereignty salute, a gesture of respect she had not given to anyone outside her own species in decades. Admiral Kane, you have defeated me completely today, but you have also given me much to think about. As Vexara left, Kael'thas turned to Kane. Do you think the sovereignty will listen? Some will, Kane said. Some won't. The galaxy is about to enter a period of great change, and change is never easy. But it's necessary. He looked at the planet below, at Velnar Prime, saved from destruction. This is just the beginning. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velnar Prime, and the galaxy had not stopped talking about it. The news had spread across 1,000 worlds. Humanity was real, they had returned, and they commanded power beyond imagination. Kael'thas stood in the newly constructed Terran Federation embassy, looking out at the busy space station that surrounded it. The embassy had been built on neutral ground, at the exact midpoint between human space and the core sovereignty systems. It was a massive structure, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. He wore new robes now, not the simple garments of an archaeologist, but the formal dress of an ambassador. After the battle, Admiral Kane had asked him to serve as humanity's cultural liaison, a bridge between humans and the other species of the galaxy. It was the most important work of his life. Kael'thas, a familiar voice called. He turned to see Admiral Kane approaching, accompanied by President Amara Singh. The president had arrived yesterday for the upcoming Galactic Summit, the first time human leadership would formally meet with representatives from across known space. Admiral, Madam President, Kael'thas said, bowing in greeting. The delegates have been arriving all morning. 4 sovereignty species have confirmed their attendance. 3 others are still refusing to participate. I expected as much, President Singh said. She was a dignified woman, but Kael'thas could see the weight of responsibility in her eyes. Change is difficult, especially when it means admitting you were wrong. The ones who did come are mostly the species who disagreed with sovereignty policies, Kane added. The military hardliners are staying away, hoping this will all blow over. Will it? Kael'thas asked. Kane looked out at the stars. No, the galaxy has changed forever. The question is whether that change will come through dialogue or through more demonstrations like Velnar Prime. An assistant approached with a data tablet. Admiral, the medical shipment to Theta Sector has been delivered. The plague that was killing the Corvin species is now contained. We estimate that we've saved approximately 2 billion lives. Good, Kane said. What about the agricultural support for the Zen colonies? The hydroponic systems are being installed now. They should be self-sufficient within 3 months. Kael'thas watched this exchange with interest. Over the past 6 months, humanity had not just been posturing with military force. They had been actively helping dozens of species, sharing medical technology, agricultural techniques, and engineering support. They were proving through actions that their intentions were genuine. President Singh looked at Kael'thas. Ambassador, I wanted to thank you personally for your work. Your insights into galactic culture have been invaluable. Without you, we would have made countless mistakes in our interactions with other species. Kael'thas felt honored but also humble. I only help with understanding, Madam President. You and your people do the real work. Understanding is the foundation of everything else, Singh replied. Speaking of which, I've been reading the reports you compiled about the sovereignty's founding. The evidence about the plague that drove humanity into exile. Have you been able to verify it? Kael'thas nodded grimly. Yes, Madam President. Working with Dr. Kowalski and a team of historians, we've traced the origin of the plague that struck humanity 2,000 years ago. It wasn't natural. It was engineered. Kane's expression darkened. Are you certain? The genetic markers are clear. The plague was designed to target human biology specifically. It was released simultaneously on 17 different human worlds, far too coordinated to be natural spread. Who created it? President Singh asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. The evidence points to research facilities operated by what would later become the founding members of the sovereignty, Kael'thas said quietly. They saw humanity as competition, as a species that was advancing too quickly and claiming too much territory. They decided to eliminate the threat before it could challenge them. The revelation hung in the air like poison. President Singh closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, they were filled with controlled anger. 2,000 years ago, they committed genocide against us, and when we left, they built an empire on the graves of our people. What will you do with this information? Kael'thas asked carefully. Present it at the summit, Singh said. The galaxy deserves to know the truth, but we won't use it as justification for revenge. That would make us no better than them. A chime sounded, indicating that the summit was about to begin. The three of them made their way to the Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered. The room was designed to accommodate hundreds of different species, with environmental controls adjusted for each delegation. Kael'thas took his position as he watched the human delegation enter. President Singh led the way, followed by Admiral Kane and several other human officials. The humans looked small compared to some of the other species, but there was a presence about them that filled the room. As Singh took her place at the central podium, the room fell silent. Every species present knew that what happened here today would shape the future of the galaxy. Delegates, representatives, honored guests, President Singh began. Thank you for attending this summit. I know that for many of you, the return of humanity has been shocking. For some, it has been unwelcome. But I believe we all share a common goal, to build a galaxy where all species can thrive in peace and prosperity. Representative Naxon of the Kralik species stood. He was one of the hardliners who had opposed human interference. With respect, President Singh, humanity disappeared for 2,000 years. You have no right to suddenly return and dictate how the galaxy should function. You're correct, Singh acknowledged. We have no right to dictate. That's why we're here to discuss, not to command. But we do have a responsibility to oppose injustice wherever we find it. Injustice? Naxon scoffed. The sovereignty has brought order to the galaxy. We have connected hundreds of worlds, established trade routes, and ended countless conflicts. You have also conquered 83 sentient species, Singh replied calmly. 42 of those species are now extinct. Is that the order you're proud of? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many of the minor species nodded in agreement, while the sovereignty representatives looked uncomfortable. Singh continued. I'm not here to claim that humanity is perfect. We have made terrible mistakes in our history. We have fought wars among ourselves, damaged our own worlds, and caused suffering. But we learned from those mistakes. We grew, we became better, and that's what we're asking of you, to choose to be better. She activated a holographic display, showing the evidence that Kael'thas had compiled, the research facilities, the genetic markers, the coordinated release of the plague across human space. 2,000 years ago, Singh said, her voice steady but hard, the founding species of the sovereignty made a decision. They saw humanity as a threat to their ambitions, so they engineered a plague designed to kill us. Billions of humans died. Our civilization collapsed. We were forced to flee into exile just to survive. Shock rippled through the assembly. Even some of the sovereignty representatives looked stunned, clearly unaware of this history. We could use this information to justify revenge, Singh continued. We could demand reparations, punishments, trials for crimes against humanity. But we won't, because that would perpetuate a cycle of violence that serves no one. She deactivated the display and looked directly at the sovereignty representatives. Instead, we're offering you a choice. Help us build a new galactic order, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. Join us in creating a galactic compact where every species has a voice, where disputes are resolved through dialogue, and where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Representative Vexara stood. She had been released from custody weeks ago and had returned to the sovereignty to deliver Admiral Kane's message. Many had expected her to call for war against humanity. Instead, she had surprised everyone by advocating for peace. President Singh, Vexara said, I was at Velnar Prime. I commanded the fleet that tried to conquer that world and was defeated in minutes by human forces. I have seen your power firsthand. Why should we believe that this offer of partnership is genuine? Why wouldn't you simply dominate us as we have dominated others? Sing met her eyes. Because domination achieves nothing lasting, Commander. Fear creates obedience, but only cooperation creates prosperity. Humanity spent 2,000 years in exile learning that lesson. We're not returning as conquerors. We're returning as partners if you'll have us. Elder Shara of the Velnar rose to speak. The Velnar people can testify to human intentions. When my world faced destruction, humanity came to our aid. They did not demand tribute or submission. They did not claim our world as their own. They simply helped us and asked for nothing in return. Representative Thexan of the Pelthar species, known for his skepticism, spoke up. You've shared medical technology with dozens of species, curing plagues that have ravaged our worlds for generations. You've provided agricultural support to colonies on the brink of starvation. You've offered engineering assistance to repair damaged infrastructure. Why, what do you gain from this generosity? Peace, Admiral Kane answered, standing to speak for the first time. A healthy, prosperous galaxy is a peaceful galaxy. We gain nothing from hoarding technology while others suffer. We gain everything from helping you thrive. But you must want something, Thexan pressed. No species acts without self-interest. You're right, Kane acknowledged. We want something. We want a galaxy where our children can live without fear, where species cooperate instead of destroying each other, where the mistakes of the past, both ours and yours, are not repeated. If that's self-interest, then yes, we're acting in our self-interest. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives embraced the idea of a galactic compact immediately. Others remained skeptical. The 3 hardline sovereignty species that had refused to attend sent messages condemning the summit as human propaganda. But slowly, carefully, progress was made. Agreements were drafted. Treaties were proposed. The framework for a new galactic order began to take shape. By the end of the summit, 200 species had signed the preliminary agreement for the Galactic Compact. It established a democratic council where each species would have representation. It created rules for trade and dispute resolution. It banned the conquest of peaceful species and established humanitarian standards that all members had to uphold. Most importantly, it designated humanity as peacekeepers, not rulers. Human fleets would patrol the galaxy, protecting member species from aggression but not imposing human law or culture on others. The 3 holdout sovereignty species rejected the compact entirely. In a joint statement, they declared that they would maintain their independence and their right to expand their territories as they saw fit. 1 month after the summit, the Kralik Sovereignty, one of the holdout species, launched an attack on a neighboring system. They had apparently decided that humanity's offer of peace was a sign of weakness. Their fleet consisted of 2,000 ships, twice the size of the force that had attacked Velnar Prime. They had spent months preparing, retrofitting their vessels with new weapons and tactics designed to counter human technology. Admiral Kane received word of the attack while reviewing construction plans for new embassy stations. He immediately ordered the Second Fleet to respond. When the Kralik's fleet arrived at their target, the human colony world of New Terra, they found 50,000 human vessels waiting for them. The Kralik's fleet stopped dead in space. Their sensors showed an impossible number of ships, all more advanced than anything in the Kralik's arsenal. Kane's transmission was brief. "This is Admiral Kane. You have attacked a member of the Galactic Compact. Stand down immediately or be destroyed." The Kralik's commander, realizing the situation was hopeless, tried to bargain. "We will withdraw if you guarantee safe passage for our fleet." "No," Kane said flatly. "You will surrender. Your ships will be escorted to the nearest compact facility, where you will face trial for war crimes. Your crew will be treated humanely, but you will answer for this attack." The Kralik's commander made the mistake of refusing. He ordered his fleet to open fire on the nearest human vessels, apparently hoping that a sudden all-out assault would create enough chaos for some ships to escape. The human fleet responded with overwhelming force. Within 10 minutes, every Kralik ship was disabled, not destroyed, but rendered completely unable to fight or flee. True to his word, Kane then had them escorted to trial. The message to the galaxy was clear. The Galactic Compact had teeth. Aggression would not be tolerated. After the Kralik's incident, the remaining holdout species reconsidered their positions. Within 3 months, 2 of them had joined the compact. The last holdout species, the Vorkai Dominion, attempted one final challenge. They did not attack human worlds or compact members. Instead, they gathered their entire fleet, over 5,000 ships, and sent them to Earth itself. It was meant to be a show of force, a demonstration that they would not be intimidated. When the Vorkai fleet arrived at the Sol system, they found something that broke their will entirely. The Sol system was not lightly defended. It was not even heavily defended. It was absolutely saturated with human military power. 200,000 ships, 500 shipyards, millions of defensive platforms, colonies on 300 worlds throughout the system. The Vorkai commander stared at the display showing the full extent of human industrial capacity and realized the truth. The 10,000 ships at Velnar Prime had not been humanity's full force. They had been a small fraction of their capabilities. Humanity had spent 2,000 years building in secret. They had transformed the void from empty space into an industrial powerhouse that dwarfed the entire sovereignty. The Vorkai fleet did not fire a shot. They simply surrendered and requested to join the Galactic Compact. 10 years passed. The Galactic Compact had grown to include nearly every major species in known space. Trade flourished. Scientific cooperation advanced technology for everyone. Conflicts still occurred, but they were resolved through mediation rather than warfare. Admiral Kane, now retired, stood on a hill on Velnar Prime, looking at the monument that had been erected there. It was a simple structure, a pillar of stone with writing in dozens of languages. On this day, legends became guardians. On this day, humanity returned. On this day, the galaxy chose peace. A small Velnar child approached him, led by her mother. The child looked up at Kane with wide eyes. "Are you Admiral Kane? The one from the stories?" Kane smiled. "I am. Were humans always heroes?" the child asked. Kane knelt down to her level. He thought about the plague that had nearly destroyed humanity. He thought about the mistakes they had made in their history, the wars they had fought among themselves, the struggles they had faced. "No," he said gently. "We just decided we wanted to be." The child seemed satisfied with that answer. As she ran off to play, Kane stood and looked out at the peaceful city below. Velnar and humans lived there together now, along with representatives from a dozen other species. The embassy had become a true melting pot of cultures. Kael'thas approached, walking with a cane now, but still active despite his age. He stood beside Kane and they looked at the monument together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had made different choices?" Kael'thas asked. "If humanity had returned as conquerors instead of protectors?" "Every day," Kane admitted. "Power is a heavy burden. It would have been easier to simply dominate the galaxy and impose our will. But easier is not the same as right. The galaxy is better because you came back," Kael'thas said. "Not perfect, but better." "That's all we can ever aim for," Kane replied. "Not perfection, but progress. Not dominance, but cooperation. Not conquest, but partnership." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors of gold and purple. Below them, the city hummed with life, filled with dozens of species working and living together. "You know," Kael'thas said with a slight smile, "when I first found that station, when I read Admiral Vasquez's message, I never imagined it would lead to all of this. I thought I would just prove that humans had existed. Instead, I helped bring them back." "You did more than that," Kane said. "You reminded us why we needed to come back. You showed us that the galaxy still had people worth fighting for." Kael'thas looked at the older human with respect. "What happens now? You're retired. The galaxy is at peace and the compact is functioning well. What does humanity do next?" Kane smiled. "We keep our promise. We watch, we protect. We help those who need it. And we hope that eventually, the galaxy won't need us to be the guardians anymore. That every species will choose to protect and help each other." "That's a beautiful dream," Kael'thas said. "It's more than a dream," Kane replied. "It's a promise. The same promise Admiral Vasquez made 2,000 years ago. We're not gone. We're watching, and we will always be here when the galaxy needs us." As the sun set fully, lights began to appear across the city below. Human, Velnar, Pelthar, and dozens of other species living together in harmony. It was not perfect. There were still disputes, still challenges, still problems to solve. But it was better than it had been. And tomorrow it would be better still. That was the true power of humanity's return. Not the ships or the weapons or the technology, but the simple determination to make tomorrow better than today, and in the end that made all the difference.